All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. Stick around and listen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about good old Nick Fuentes. He's having a bit of what you call a generational run at the moment, where he basically is blown up and gone mainstream. You would never have expected it. I remember when I first saw Nick Fuentes, around the time when Trump first, came to prominence in 2016, I was sort of writing for Alternative Right, which is one of the founding websites for, the alt-right and stuff like this. And, Richard Spencer was around and, all this kind of stuff. I noticed when Richard Spencer sort of, after the Charlottesville, Richard Spencer went a bit quiet and, he said he supported Biden and ridiculous things like this. Obviously, he's been blackmailed in some way or told to shut up or he's controlled opposition or something. I don't know. But, that was around the time I began to take notice of Nick Fuentes. Now, my initial thoughts on him, he was just this rather sort of obnoxious, but he certainly said some funny things at times. He certainly said some true things, So he was interesting, but he did seem to have this kind of, he was like this young guy and, and he was this sort of, he was almost kind of, even though I liked some of what he had to say, he was sort of something repulsive about him. But, he grew on me. And also I think he matured a little and, he grew into his own personality. As he's now 27, he's become, a bit smarter with the way he says things. A lot of what he did early on was to shock people, and certainly he succeeded in that, ladies and gentlemen. And but of late, he's become this kind of gadfly to the Republican Party, which I think has been a good thing. And, you've got Candace Owens turning against Israel. You've got Tucker Carlson turning against Israel. Of course, Nick's been against Israel from the start. And, they've decided to interview him. And then you've got Piers Morgan, did an interview to try and take him down. I mean, they must have something on Piers Morgan, don't they, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know what it is, but they got something. He's always just trying to push the official line, isn't he? But, they have Piers Morgan, and he tried to take him down, but Nick won. Nick is a really great debater. I used to say that about Jordan Peterson, but where the hell is he? He's off crying. Ever since he shook Bibi's hand, he's useless. You almost can say from that moment. The moment he shook Bibi's hand, the whole right wing, we don't want to, get fucked. And that little fucking goblin, what's his name, Ben Shapiro. I mean, as soon as that was set up, he was done. I enjoyed early Jordan Peterson. I called him Peterson back then because he's Peter Stein these days. But, there it is. So, I like Nick Fuentes. I've watched a number of his different long podcasts. The Tucker Carlson interview, the whole thing is pretty excellent. He did this other interview with this woman on Red Ice, I think it's called. And she got cancelled for it. She was an actress who had a part in, the Succession show. She's great. I can't remember her name. It's a Russian-sounding name. But, I think Nick's doing an interesting job, and he's certainly putting a cat amongst the pigeons. It's amazing, that he's still alive. Of course, Nick says that Tucker is CIA, and Tucker says that Nick is a Fed, Nick did attend January 6th, and he was, had a bullhorn and was encouraging people to go into the building, and why wasn't he arrested? You would think someone that vocal would probably be arrested. That is unusual. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Who knows what the future will hold? I mean, obviously, the future will hold a bullet if he holds too many outside conferences, but Nick doesn't seem to do that. He seems to keep it on the low down, do it from his parents' basement or something like that, which is probably a good idea. That's probably where he should stay, do a Joe Biden, hide out in a basement for a few years. But there it is, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll just have to see how the generational run of Nick Fuentes keeps going. Thank you for listening.